Hello, this is the asynchronous recording for Business Math B, Unit 4. This is Ms. Thomas speaking. Today we are going to look at three key concepts from Unit 4, specifically from Lesson 17, Calculating Markup Share, from Lesson 18, Calculating Projected Sales, and from Lesson 19, Calculating Advertising Costs. Let's get started with Lesson 17, Calculating Market Share. So what is a market share? Market share is the percent of the entire market that purchases a product or a service from a particular seller. Again, the percent of the entire market that purchases a product or service from a particular seller. In other words, what percentage of consumers are buying your product versus everyone else, versus your competition? And we can think about this, we could represent it as a pie chart. So let's say that this pie graph represents all of the coffee sales in my area, and I live in Phoenix. So let's say this pie chart represents all of the coffee sales in Phoenix over some particular time period. And let's say I run a pretty successful coffee business and I have a decent portion of sales. Somewhere in here that looks like, I don't know, maybe about 10% or so. Okay? This 10% that are my sales of the entire market, that's my market share. Okay, so notice that it's expressed as a percent. Okay, I'm comparing the number of sales that I have versus the total number of sales, including mine, that happened in the market. Now, there are going to be several other sellers that are rolled into this calculation. So, for example, maybe Starbucks takes up a pretty big chunk. Maybe if you're local to Phoenix or Arizona, you might know about Dutch Brothers. Maybe they take up a huge chunk of sales as well. And then maybe the rest is like miscellaneous independent shops, right? So this pie is cut into a ton of pieces. I'm just worried about one, my total product sales versus two, all the total sales that happen, the entire pie. So it's my piece of the pie. It's my little piece of the pie, right? Versus the entire pie, including my sales. Okay? Now, we can think about this in the equation. Market share equals total product sales, which is what you're seeing here is my little pie piece, divided by total market sales, the total pie. So one more time. Market share equals the total product sales divided by total market sales. So notice that we're creating a ratio between total product sales to total market sales. We're going to get some decimal, or some number in decimal form, rather, out of this. And it's going to be equal to or less than 1 if there are 1 million bicycles sold in my area and I sold all 1 million, then I sold 100% of them. That's the maximum percentage I could have, right? So market share, you're going to get some decimal between 0 and 1.0, but we're going to want to express our final answer in percentage form. And I know you guys have been practicing converting back and forth between percent and decimal form this whole term, so I think you'll be able to handle that pretty easily. Again, market share, the percent of the entire market that purchases a product or service from a particular seller. Written as an equation, market share is the total product sales divided by total market sales. Let's look at a few examples. So let's say Hal's Hardware sells approximately 200 outdoor hoses annually, and in the same town, all outlets, all hose sales are approximately 1,450 annually. So they're telling us the number that Hal sells is about 200 a year, and the number for that particular town per year of outdoor hose sales, is 1,450. And we want to know, what is Hal's market share for these outdoor hoses? What's his piece of the pie? So I always like to start a problem just by highlighting and reminding myself what's the goal. And the goal is to figure out the market share for Hal's Hardware for hoses in this town. Okay. That's my cue. I'm trying to find market share. That's my cue to pull up the market share equation. So to find this, I need to take the ratio of product sales to total market sales. Now remember, when they mention product sales, we're talking about, this is where we're saying Hal's sales. And total market sales are all the sales that happened, including Hal's. So let's see if we can plug in this information. Okay, so we need to know the total product sales for Hal's. And they did tell us that, right? They said Hal's sells approximately 200 outdoor hoses annually. So that's going to be the total product sales, 200. Next, we need to know total market sales. Change colors here. Total market sales. Well, it says all outlets for hoses sell approximately 1,450 annually. So that's my total market sales. They specifically said all outlets, so we know that they've already included Hal's hardware in that calculation. So that's all there is to it. We get 200, the 200 that Hal's sold divided by the total sold, 1,450. And it tells us his market share is 0.137 or 13.7%. So the hardest part of this, I think, is just identifying total product sales and total market sales. Sometimes additional information is thrown in, which can make the problem a little more challenging, which is what we'll start to see in the next few examples. So let's move forward. Geraldo's Hiking Company and Swift Sporting Goods are the only stores in town that sell hiking gear. Geraldo's sells 400 pairs of hiking shoes a year, and Swift Sporting sells 500 pairs of hiking shoes a year. What is Geraldo's market share for hiking shoes in this town? So once again, let's start by identifying the goal of this problem. We want to find Geraldo's market share for hiking shoes in this particular place. So that's our cue. Pull out your market share equation. So we need to know the total product sales and we need to know the total market sales. So again, total product sales in this case is just referring to Geraldo's sales. Total market sales means all, including, I'll just put G for Geraldo. So they told us, let's see if we can start plugging in numbers. They told us that Geraldo sells 400 pairs of hiking shoes a year. Done. So we know that his total product, so Geraldo's total product sales are 400. We need to divide that by the total market sales. Now it's going to be tempting here to just put in 500 as total market sales. But remember, it's the total market sales including what Geraldo sold. So if these two companies, let's draw our pie again. If Geraldo's and Swift are the only two sellers in town, and let's say this piece of the pie represents 400, the 400 sales that Geraldo made, and this piece represents the 500 pairs that Swift sold, that's our complete pie because these are the only two sellers. So our total market sales then, we have to add up all these pieces, would be 400 plus 500, which is equal to 900. So 900 is going to be our total market sales. Again, adding up all of the sales, the 400 from Geraldo's, the 500 from Swift's, our total market sales become 900. So now we have our equation set up. Type it into your calculator. Be careful to either make sure your parentheses are in place for the denominator or just simplify it to 900 before you do the division. We get our market share is 0.444. Converted to percent form, we get 44.4%. Let's look at one more example of market share. Let's say two bicycle models manufactured by Mr. B's Bicycles are the Nomad and the Traveler. Last year, 2,000 Nomads were sold and 4,000 Travelers were sold. The total number of bicycles that were sold last year amounted to 1,250,000. What combined market share can Mr. B's claim for these two models? Okay, once again, start with just rereading what you're being asked to solve for. And I know that seems like kind of an obvious thing to do, but often, and myself included, we see these word problems, we rush through, we kind of skim and don't read them fully. So let's make sure we're understanding what it is we're being asked to solve. So we need to find the market share for both models. So this time we're not just talking about one particular item, we're talking about two types of bicycles as a part of the whole pie piece. And so once again, let's just draw a quick picture to make sure we understand. If I think of all the bicycle sales as this pie chart, maybe the Nomad, represents a chunk that size. The Nomad is one of the models we're talking about. Maybe the Traveler represents a chunk that side, so N for Nomad, T for Traveler. Traveler is the other model. The question says, what's the combined market share for both of those models together? So our goal is to calculate this entire chunk, okay, compared to all of the sales that took place. So here we go. We grab our market share equation. We know market share is equal to total product sales divided by total market sales. So total product sales then, in this example, are going to be the Nomad sales plus the Traveler sales, because we're trying to figure out the market share for both of the models. So we need the Nomad plus Traveler. Well, they told us that last year 2,000 Nomads were sold. Let me grab my highlighter. 2,000 Nomads were sold and 4,000 Travelers were sold. So those are our total product sales, the 2,000 plus 4,000. Next, our total market share, or total market sales, excuse me. It says the total number of bicycles that were sold last year amounted to 1,250,000. So those are our total market sales. And I know that they included the Nomad and Traveler sales in that calculation because they used the word total. So pay attention to keywords like that, the sum, the total, all of the sales, whatever it is. Make sure that when you're subbing in your number for total market sales, that it clearly includes the sales for the particular items or item that you're talking about. Okay, so we have the 6,000 product sales from those two models, our total market sales a little over $1 million. So we simplify, and that's going to give us the market share. Notice that this came out pretty small, and I just want to point this out because I know sometimes students will get a number like this and just assume it's wrong, because most of the time when we calculate percentages, they usually fall between 1 and 100%, right? So as always, double check your calculations, but this is correct. You'll get 0.0048. This is decimal form. Remember, to convert to percent form, we multiply by 100, which would move the decimal place 2 points to the right. So we do end up with, they don't even control 1 whole percent of the market. They are at 0.48% of the market, so a tiny, tiny little pie piece. And this is reasonable. If I look back at my numbers, 6,000 out of 1.25 million, it seems reasonable that this is going to end up being a pretty small result. Okay, so that's it for market share. From here, continue to the asynchronous activity that corresponds to this lesson 17 piece, and I'll see you on the next video.